Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with another Total War Warhammer video. Today's topic is the top 5 things we need during the life cycle of Total War Warhammer 3. So without further ado, let's begin. The Total War Warhammer series has been running for a decent amount of time now, and to call it anything less than massive would not be doing it justice. As of the time of recording this video, we have seen the release of 2 rather large base games and a huge amount of both paid for and free DLC. Over the years, this series has gotten better and better, but there are still a few issues that keep this game series away from near perfection. Now, since Total War Warhammer 2's life cycle is coming to an end, making way for the third and final installment to this series, it can be expected that most of these issues will be tackled within the third and final game. But with that, we've compiled a list of the top 5 issues that need to be looked at the most. For our 5th spot, we have a faster patch cycle. So a common occurrence with the Total War Warhammer series is that every time a new DLC is released, the lines seem to get crossed internally and it creates some problems as new fixes come into effect. The perfect example of this would be with the newest DLC as of the time of recording this video, the Warden and the Paunch. So the Warden and the Paunch launched with a massive amount of changes to the game, specifically in regards to the greenskin overhaul and a few other quality of life changes. Now, it also came with a bunch of problems too, a minor one being that the famous T-pose has returned to characters in the campaign map. But that was also accompanied by a rather big issue where gambling for your wins of magic is now effectively broken. This can present to be a rather large problem, especially if you're playing a race or faction that relies heavily on magic. Admittedly, Creative Assembly have gotten much better at this. Originally, I believe you would only really get patches when new content dropped, whether it was paid for or free. And at least now we do get patches a little bit more frequently, even though it's still quite far away, and we do have the live beta form, but we lack the basic form of hotfixes, something that's been pointed out in the forums by fans many times. Just some basic quality of life hotfixes would be fantastic, nothing too major, but when problems arrive such as the magic gambling system being broken, that should really become a priority. Naturally, yes, I am aware that these things normally get put into a live beta, but it can be quite easy to miss, especially for fans who might not be so active on social media or the forums. So generalized hotfixes here would be great, even if it just fixes 1 or 2 different things. It doesn't have to be a major patch. It's called a hotfix for a reason. For our 4th spot, we have faster overhaul reworks. When Total War Warhammer 2 launched, all the races implemented in the second game were miles ahead from the first game. And as races and factions from the first game were later introduced as playable races and factions in the Mortal Empires or the Eye of the Vortex, some of them have received major overhauls to bring them more in line with the Game 2 races and factions. The problem, however, is that this has been dreadfully slow. We're actually getting very close to the end of Total War Warhammer 2's life cycle, and a decent number of races, factions, and other quality of life overhauls have still not been implemented into the second game. And we have been made aware that not every race and faction will see a rework in Total War Warhammer 2. For example, major reworks such as the Siege rework and the Warriors of Chaos rework are getting implemented in Total War Warhammer 3. So at least we know it's actually coming, but this also makes me think of another potential problem. The reason why the races from Warhammer 1 needed an overhaul was because the races in Warhammer 2 were so drastically different from the Game 1 races in terms of new mechanics and so on. Now, it can be assumed that the factions and races from Warhammer 3 will also be drastically different in terms of mechanics and new technology from the races in Warhammer 1 and 2. This leads me to believe that once Warhammer 3 launches and we start getting some cross-game DLC, especially when we start getting the big mega Mortal Empires campaign, that the races from Game 1 and 2 will have to be reworked to be able to be brought up to snuff with Game 3 races. But does that also mean that anyone that's already been reworked will have to receive a second one in the third game too? That's a lot of different races and factions that would need to be looked at once again to be brought up to Game 3 standards. Currently, we only receive faction reworks during content patches which come alongside DLC packs, with these DLC packs themselves varying between a 3 to 5 month cycle, I want to say, more or less. And even then, a faction overhaul doesn't come out with every single DLC. So if we take into account the absolute massive amount of races and factions already implemented into the series, it would take a long time to be able to have all of them at the same level, or at least close to the same level, meaning that this could potentially take years until every race and faction's at the same point. So does that mean that a lot of races and factions will just be broken for a long time? I'm looking at you, Wood Elves, where they're just really not fun to play and a lot of of people actively avoid that faction. Interestingly enough, this is also something that happens in the tabletop. When a new edition launches, in this case a new game, those races and factions that did not carry over just yet would be at a disadvantage, especially for gameplay purposes in tournaments and so on. That's why a lot of people, when they received the new edition, would look towards a new army book, codex or battle tome, as it just made more sense to play something else until their favourite faction got updated. And sometimes you had to wait a horrendously massive amount of time for that to actually happen. So hopefully in Total War Warhammer 3 we'll start to see overhauls happen at a much quicker rate. For our third spot we have inspiration from all other Total War titles. There are many Total War titles, each with very interesting mechanics and systems which are rather unique, and other mechanics which are rather a mainstay in Total War, which interestingly enough never got implemented into the Total War Warhammer series. A perfect example of an older mechanic would be unit formations, which interestingly enough, or better yet said shockingly enough, never got implemented until Total War Warhammer. Yes, I'm fully aware that we have a bare bones style unit formation, which is closer to the tabletop, but this is not Warhammer Fantasy, the tabletop game. This is Total War Warhammer, which is its own thing, and should be treated as such. Unit formations have always been rather important, especially in the Total War series, and it would be great to finally see that implemented into the Total War Warhammer series. Now something from a more newer game would be the diplomacy system from Total War 3 Kingdoms. Anyone who's played Total War 3 Kingdoms can easily attest that their diplomacy system is probably the best they've ever had. And to be honest, it shouldn't just be in the Total War Warhammer series, but from now on in every single future Total War title. The guessing game was finally removed there, and it just presented a much easier, user-friendly, but also still quite dynamic and rewarding system. As there's so many Total War games that have so many different systems and so on, there's so much potential to lift something from an older game and give it a fresh coat of paint. Moving on to our second spot, we have more legendary characters, especially legendary heroes. The Warhammer Fantasy universe is absolutely massive, where hundreds of characters have been established into the lore and background of this fully fledged out world. Some characters have one or two lines of lore, where others have novel series after them. We do have a fair amount of legendary lord characters established in the game, but even then that's barely scratching the surface. Now, I'm not saying that they should implement every single character established in Warhammer Fantasy, or else, well, this would probably be the longest running game series of all time, but more are definitely needed, especially in the form of legendary heroes, as there are a decent number of characters established in the lore that are rather iconic but never led armies, instead they formed part of one. A perfect example of this would be Kurt Helborg, the Reichsmarshal of the Empire. He had his own lore, unique model, and very decent stats on the tabletop. This was a character that many were familiar with, and it's quite a shame that we still don't have him implemented into the series. In all honesty, I could probably spend hours beyond hours talking about legendary characters that could be implemented into the series, and I'm sure that you guys could probably think about one or two right off the top of your head. Many of you have favourite characters from the Warhammer Fantasy universe, either lords or heroes, and you're still holding out hope that they'll eventually get implemented into the series. And truthfully, so am I. But now for our last spot. We need more engaging endgame. How many times do you start up Total War Warhammer, start a new campaign, and play through it for a decent amount of time, to be honest, but after some time start getting bored to the point that you just normally forget about that campaign and start a new one? This normally happens to players after a certain point where they're pretty much unbeatable in their current campaign. Nothing really presents themselves to be a threat, no matter what difficulty you're playing on. And while the Total War series has generally been quite sandbox, when you take on a world and a universe as large as Warhammer Fantasy, you expect a bit more of an endgame. The Total War team are trying this more and more, especially when you look towards DLC packs like the Warden and the Paunch, where playing as Eltharion the Grim you have to protect yourself from Grom's forces. But currently there are very few characters that have an actual endgame. In most cases you just have to paint a certain part of the map and then deal with the Chaos Invasion, and even then you don't even deal with the Chaos Invasion yourself because a normal minor faction just wipes them out before you even get to them. Something really needs to be done about the endgame aspect for this series, especially for the third and final game. I want to have reason to be able to start up a new campaign and actually see it all the way through. But what do you guys think about our list? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below and let's start a bit of a discussion. I'm rather curious to see what you guys think is the most important, or do you think something else deserves to be on the top 5? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below and let's start a bit of a discussion. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below, we have various different social media links such as Facebook, Instagram and Discord, where you can get in contact with the Great Book team, talk to us about Total War, Warhammer, or just anything really. Also in the description section below is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could get loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Purchasing using this link and also using our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons, your support means the world to us. Honestly, it's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A special thank you to our patrons Gibraltar LUSC and Ryan Bertsche for subscribing to us at our fame level. Honestly, you guys are super cool. And a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing and commenting on these videos. Honestly, the channel's been growing a lot lately and it's all thanks to you guys. Without you, the Great Book would be nothing. We're trying to implement more videos into the channel soon, but we're getting stuff done outside of YouTube at the moment, just like artwork and so on for the channel. It's just taking a little while to get everything to look to a standard that we feel is cool. Honestly guys, thank you so much for all the support lately, it's been amazing. But with that my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.